Okay, we're going to be talking about section 13.2 today, which is talking about consumer credit. So what we're going to be looking at is what we call installment buying, which is closed-end credit. We're going to be talking about open-end credit. So with installment buying, what we were talking about with installment buying is agreeing to repay periodically. And there are a couple of different ways to do installment buying. One way is what we call a closed-end credit, which means you're going to borrow a set amount up front and you're going to pay that back in a certain number of payments. Furniture loans, car loans, things like that, where the amount that you're borrowing will not change, and you're buying it for a certain item. It's not like your credit limit can be increased or decreased, or you might only use credit or something. Open-end credit means that there's no fixed number of installments. A department store credit card is the best example. You know, they tell you that you've got $1,000 credit. You might never use it, or you might go and use it all and pay off on a monthly payment. So those are two different types of installment payments that you can think about. And there's something called add-on interest. And loans that are set up under a closed-end credit system are usually based on add-on interest. That means, again, that the amount that is borrowed, P, the interest rate is R, over a certain number of years. They calculate the simple interest. They add that simple interest to the principal amount, and then the payments are divided up equally. So again, if you think about add-on interest, you know, you've got a car loan, you know how much your car payment is every single month. The amount of your car payment doesn't change, and unless you refinance it or something. And so the terms of the loan are set up at the very beginning. You're borrowing the full amount of the loan, and the interest is added on to it. So here we have an example of add-on interest. He wants to buy $2,800 worth of furniture. He pays $400 down and agrees to pay the balance at 6% add-on interest for 2 years. So our first step is to figure out how much interest he's going to do. Now, to figure out A, we can go back to that formula that says, we can go back to that formula for A that says A, which is the amount, the future amount, is equal to the principal 1 plus R times T. And this is going to tell us the total amount that has to be repaid. We can also calculate the interest and then add that in, but it'll give us the same answer. So the principal is $2,400 because he wants to buy $2,800 worth of furniture, but he's making a $400 down payment. So we have $2,400. 1 plus the rate is 0.06, and the time is 2 years, which is 24 over 12. And so if we do this calculation, and 24 over 12 comes out to be 2 years. So if we do this calculation, we end up finding out that the amount to be repaid, in other words, the future amount, is $2,688. Okay, so he's borrowing $2,400, paying $288 in interest, and the amount that he has to repay is $2,688. So now I want to figure out how much is my monthly payment going to be. And to figure out my monthly payment, I have to take that $2,688 and divide it by the total number of payments, which is 24 payments. 2 years, 1 month each, 24 payments. So that's going to be $112 for each month. Sorry. Okay, so When we're looking at open-end credit, um, with open-end credit, a credit limit's established. But again, depending on whether you use that credit limit, you may or may not get a charge each month. So there's itemized billing, and each month you're going to get a bill from the company that says you have spent this much money, this is how much you owed at the beginning of the month, and this is how much interest or finance charge has been added on to it, and then you will pay that information or you'll pay that bill. They usually calculate a monthly payment on that also. So instead of calling it interest in these cases, what we do is we call it finance charge. It's a charge to finance the purchase. And again, you only have to pay, in many, many cases, finance charges only paid on unpaid balances. So that means that if you don't use the credit card, you're not going to get charged something. There may be a yearly fee or something like that, but most of the time they're just going to charge you on what you're buying. So the balance is typically calculated on whatever the balance was at the end of the previous month, not the month that you're on, but the month prior. Occasionally, they'll do an average daily balance, which we're going to talk about that too and how to calculate that. All right, so let's look at this example. And it looks a little bit complicated, but let's go through and talk about each step. So at the end of the last month, the balance that was unpaid was $432.56. The finance charge that you're going to be paying is on that $432.56. So the first thing you've got to do is calculate your finance charge for the 1 month. So you're going to take the 432 and you're going to multiply it by 0.015, and you get an amount of $649. I'm sorry, $6.49. Then you made a purchase of $325 and you made a payment of $200. So at the end of the month, we're going to add this finance charge, we're going to add the purchases, but then we're going to subtract that payment that you made. So at the end of the month, your balance is $564.27. Okay, that amount is what we consider to be the unpaid balance at the beginning of the next month. And so we're going to multiply that by the finance charge, the interest rate, and we're going to have a finance charge of $8.46 plus this payment, plus this purchase minus the payment ends up with an unpaid balance of $450.23. And so that's how some credit cards work. They take that unpaid balance, they calculate the finance charge on that, they add purchases in, they subtract any payments out, and they get a new unpaid balance that will be used at the beginning of the next month to calculate your bills. Okay? The other type of problem is what we call an average daily balance. And what an average daily balance, typically these are used for open-end lending. And what an average daily balance does is it takes, if it's a 30-day billing cycle, they will look at the bill, they will look at the balance every single day, and they will calculate how much interest every single day. So instead of taking that starting balance and basing everything off of that, you might make, a $500 payment the second day of the month, and instead of charging you interest on that unpaid balance for the whole month, they're going to charge you a different amount each day, which could be to your advantage. So let's look at this. The billing cycle starts on March 3rd. On March 12th, you make a payment of $250. On March 17th, you have car repairs for $422.85. On March 20th, you buy some food for $124.80. And on April 1st, you buy some clothes at $64.32. So you made one payment on March 12th, and then you did make some more purchases. And so what's going to happen is your bill is going to change each time you make a purchase or something like that. So here's a table that sort of starts it all off. So we have, I think I accidentally skipped a slide a couple back here, so let me just go back. Okay, so we have this credit card example. This is what we were just looking at. And the balance starts at $320.75. The bank charges 1.4% per month on the average daily balance. Find the average daily balance for the next billing cycle through April 3rd. Okay, so on this very first date here, the billing date, the balance is starting off at 320.75. Okay, so let's look at this slide. So here's what we have. Our balance on March 3rd was $320.75. On March 3rd, March 4th, March 5th, all the way to March 11th, these are my balances, $320.75 on March 3rd, March 4th, March 5th, March 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. So that's equal to 9 days. So for 9 days, my balance is $320.75. On March 12th, I made a payment. So my balance is now $70.75. And it doesn't change again until the 17th. So on March 12th, March 13th, all the way to March 17th, March 16th, my balance is $70.75. And so it's $70.75 for 5 days. Okay. On March 17th, I make a purchase of $422. So my balance increases to $493. And so on the 17th, all the way to the 19th, the 17th, the 18th, and the 19th, my balance is $493.60. So for 3 days, that's my balance. On March 20th, I make another payment, another purchase of $124.80. So on the 20th, all the way to March 31st, which is 12 days, I have a balance of $618.40. On April 1st, I make another purchase and it becomes $682.72. So on April 1st, April 2nd, which is 2 days, my balance is $682.72. Because if you look back at the directions, it tells you that the billing cycle ends or begins on April 3rd. So you only count April 1st and April 2nd for this $682. So now let's look at this. These are the numbers that we just talked about. $320.75 for 9 days. We're going to multiply those two numbers together, and that's where I get the $2,886.75. $70.75 for 5 days is $353.75. So I multiply each of these numbers by the number of days that the balance was at that level, and I end up with those different numbers on the chart. So now to calculate my average daily balance, you want to add up all of the daily balances. So we're going to add 2,886.75, 353.75, 1,480.80, 7,420.80, and we're going to add 1,365.44, and that comes out with this $13,507.54. It was that balance for 31 days, because that's the billing cycle. So we divide by the number of days, which comes out to be $435.73. So what $435.75 tells us is that this is the average balance or daily balance. Okay, it is not telling us that the daily balance at the beginning was 320. It's not telling us the balance at the end was 682. It's calculating an average daily balance, and it's basing the finance charge off of that. So it's taking the $435.73 and multiplying it by 0.014, which is the percentage they gave us. So the finance charge for that month would be $6.10. So using a method like this could be good and it could be bad. If I had used the other method, whoops, let me go back a second. If I had used the other method, my finance charge would have been based on the 320.75. So during that month, my finance charge would have been less. But then the next month, it would have been using the $682.72 for my finance charge. So my finance charge would have been higher. So using the average daily balance can benefit the consumer, because you're not necessarily always going to be paying, a variable, a larger amount of money. It might be a better amount of money. It might not, but it could be. All right, I hope this helps. Keep in touch with me. Let me know how things are going. Again, we're approaching the end of the semester, so make sure you keep up with your work. Have a great week.